Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please check the number and dial again.
Right, so I wanted to start our conversations, and I was thinking one of the topics would be the fact that most Japanese anime and also manga are located, or the story really takes place in Japan, or most of it does, right? Like, because if not, we have things like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which take part in multiple countries. I guess even Dragon Ball Z technically is all over the world, although it's not this world. Not specifically. Because I think they're kind of in Japan when they're having their tournaments, but there's many. We get the feeling that there's many worlds, and then when there are attacks, like with Cell and whatever, many places are attacked. But I almost feel like the whole world is a different shape. Anyways, yeah. So I was thinking about the fact that so many stories happen in Japan, and I understand. I mean, most mangaka will be Japanese. Most of them will not have known of the cultures or the life in other countries, so it would be hard to speak on it or to even depict it. At least, not thoroughly, but let's say in a way that is authentic. But then, at the same time, we do get some mangaka and some studios that will go there, that will try. And then I thought, actually, it really looks like, instead of it being very Japanese-centric, actually, manga as a whole, anime as a whole, seems to have taken some sort of it has adopted other cultures. Like I've been watching Sensei Le Chevalier du Zodiac, whatever you want to call it, and then basically, now that I think about it, the creator took so many things from so many places. It's actually more of a melting pot of cultures that is happening, and it's not just there. Of course, in many manga or anime, basically, you still have little notes of Japanese cultures. For example, I'm watching My Next Life as a Villainess, and although it's supposed to be this European kind of feel, I mean, it's a made-up world, right? So it looks like a European style kind of feel. But then they have things where, for example, there's the way you call someone affecting the relationship between two people. Whereas that's really just a Japanese thing where you're supposed to call someone by their last name, and if you're somewhat friends or an elder, you can add a suffix like kun, chan, tan on it. But then if you're really close, you can just say their name. But that's really Japan-centric, and it's happening in an anime where we're not really talking about Japan. Sounds weird, but then I understand it's not that it's not weird at all, because it feels like all of anime and manga are trying to create this mixture of cultures and ideas, and it's almost like the best of both worlds. And I feel almost like that's what that's what that's what interests people, even though we might not be always aware of it.
This is take fucking 3. The audio was so bad. Oh my god. Anyway, what we were saying was even though you think like, oh yeah, Japan in its mangas are like, yeah, we like introduce all these different cultures, put a little sprinkle of like American bullshit and all this nonsense. In reality, it's not executed well. Maybe the intent is like there, but execution wise, it's like, what are you on right now?
And all it does is basically cultural erasure. It just erases what really makes these countries the way they are, and then creates these stereotypes that all the other animes are going to just keep dishing out.
Like a good example, I think that we somewhat recently saw is Violet Evergarden, where you're like, you see this German-ish town with this blonde, blue-eyed main character who has an English name that she got from her dead lover's most trusted family members. I'm still stuck on that because it's just ridiculous. The premise is ridiculous. And it's like, what are you trying to show Japan? That you still like on the bad side of history? Like, what are you trying to say?
And more than that, it really feels like, I think you said it before, at least in the when the watch along, you were talking about how it looks like a colony because it's very tropical setting, but then you're giving all these German names and it's giving some colonial vibes over here.
And it's like, I don't even know if they're like aware of what they're doing. It's like they're romanticizing colonies, colonization, imperialism, and I'm like, do you really want to go with that?
It's more than that, because when you remove the indigenous people, because we don't really see them interacting with people who are clearly of the land, you don't see an otherism or anything like that.
Yeah.
Though there are people of color in the show,
'Cause, like,
it makes it seem like they're just sanitizing history. They're like, oh, colonies didn't really exist. Germany just happened to be in like maybe Asia or Africa. I don't know what this island /
like
coastal
the
town
Pacific,
is.
Pacific Islands or like East Islands. Like, I don't know where the hell it is set, but it's
Not Germany,
it's definitely not Germany.
but it's German with white people
And slightly darker people, but still have German-ish names. So I'm like,
Japan. What are you trying to do over here?
it's a weird take. It's a weird take.
And even when they're not trying to represent a specific country or anything like that, you still have the issue where they bring these settings and they don't know how to complete it. And I mean, they like mangakas and these anime, whatever people. Like, if you look at Snow White with the red hair, there's like so many world building problems, but specifically the idea that you can have this medieval like setting and you don't follow through in the world building. Like, people are still behaving with Japanese in a Japanese way, upholding Japanese values as though they're Japanese, and you're like, no. You do not get to put in multiple countries with different kingdoms, with different cultures. Well, they should have different cultures, and then give them the same Japanese culture. That's just weird.
Or if you give them like the same Japanese culture, you gotta give it a reason. Were they all at some point conquered by a Japanese-ish conqueror and then they subdivided?
No, of course not. They're not gonna give that. They're not gonna give that reason.
But that's the only way it would make sense.
Yeah, and even when you look at the names of the characters, there's like these two princes. There's Izana and Zen, from a country, a kingdom called Clarines. Clarines is a word with Nordic roots. What is going on? Why would you give them clearly Japanese names? And it has zero relevance to the story that they're Japanese names. And people will just take it like, oh, it's cool, I don't care. Like, even if you want to say that they don't want to give them names that are too difficult for people to remember or to say.
Please.
No. There are plenty of English names that can easily be said in Japanese.
But also, that's like a mute point because I've seen like so many animes, so many shows with towns, with countries, with people's names that are impossible to pronounce if you don't know the language. If you have like a Japanese accent and you try to speak in German, bruh.
But sometimes even when they do it, it's like, oh God, no, stop.
Or it's like so long. It's like the running joke in Gitama, Jugem, that had the longest name. Like, for what?
Oh my God, I like that little monkey.
Right? I think it's also an issue of like people not willing to do the extra step of researching outside of the comfort zone, namely their country and their own culture. They're like, I'm just gonna talk about Japan and just use these fancy ass swords that I know nothing about.
And you might say, okay, maybe it's a thing of they don't have the resources, because if you only speak Japanese, how are you going to read about like Brazil and what they're about and how they live their life and everything? You probably don't even have people in your town or whatever that you can speak to, or even in your friend groups who you can speak to that come from these countries. Now, I understand that, but I will say,
Google Translate.
yeah. That's better than nothing, because honestly, like most of these, oh God.
Because even if, like, let's say you do Google Translate and it's like a bad translation, this Reddit, you can find people. You if you have the internet, you can find a way to get reliable information. Don't be lazy.
But I think that also ties into the fact that they're going to be excused for that. Like, there's so many like issues in anime and no one's calling them out because, or at least very few people, and when they do call them, they get like shut down for it because like, canceled. Oh no, don't ruin our anime, don't analyze it.
Oh, it's so precious.
But it's, at the end of the day, it's a media like any other, and we should not be holding it up on a pedestal and saying like it's okay to be bad storytellers and it's okay to not do your research. Because it's not.
Because like when I like the what's his name, Reiraku. Like, let's just even forget about cultures. How about you research the other gender? It is not that hard. It's not that hard. Like, I'm sure you know a woman.
I feel like the woman in his life will probably be like, just, I don't even want to talk to you. Like, if this is how you think women are.
Because like when I read and when I read the reviews and comments on Anime List, everyone is like praising him, like, oh, he's so deep, nah. It's like a deep version of Bakuman. Like, oh, Bakuman's for babies, this one's for men. And I'm like, y'all know what he almost did to his wife, right? Y'all just gonna ignore that? Y'all gonna ignore the fact that the women in the story are just like, oh, I'm one-dimensional.
And I think that backs up the point that the primary target audience for these mangas and this anime is Japanese people, and they're thinking, so long as Japanese people don't have an issue with this,
it's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Ooh.
Like, oh, you one person over there in Burundi, you have an issue with my writing.
Well, screw you.
Exactly.
It's like African Salaryman. I refuse to finish one episode because, God. First of all, they say that, is it only the lion who's African? That can't be right, because so many other characters are indigenous to Africa, and I'm like, who you lying? Who you lying to?
And the way that they behave is not African. The jokes have nothing to do with Africa. I just wish they had taken the word African out.
Yeah,
like, it would have been
just
fine.
make it like, I don't know, wild animal salaryman or lion salaryman.
But no, they had to put African, and like, we don't want to be part of this.
Like, so bad. And you know, when they try to like use, like, for example, if they use like for African anime, they're like trying to draw you in with the whole African thing. Banana Fish, they try to like draw you in with the whole, oh, it's set in New York, it's grungy, it's gritty, la 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 la, and it's like, no, the setting has like no impact, not one, nothing. It doesn't help, and it doesn't like take away from the story, whether it's in America or if you put in Japan, like no difference. So why?
Even the only thing that's different is maybe the names, but that's it.
That's easily changed.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's like this is a story that could have, instead of gangsters, yakuza.
Yeah.
There.
Because the fact that it's set in America, before you had mentioned like how they like, oh, the American guy is like so shy about calling the Japanese guy by his first name. It's like, nah, American guy doesn't even know about that culture. He don't know that it's like only for like people who are intimate. What?
And while that might be true in many cultures, I don't think that's a thing that people would characterize in America.
No.
Or in Africa.
No.
Or in a lot of Europe. That's like maybe an Asian thing.
Probably. But even that, I'm not sure. I just know.
Yeah, but it's not everywhere, and it's weird that they're putting it on America.
It's almost like they think that everyone knows, like, oh, this is Japanese culture, you all must memorize and know.
Yeah, it's...
Go to cram school for
it's
it.
It's imperialism at work.
It's so odd. It's just like, you see just a bunch of people just idolizing shit because, ooh, it's anime, it's beautiful anime, but it's like, does it have substance though?
Yeah.
Does it track?
When it has this many issues, shouldn't you be calling it out?
And I'm going to call out all these people be drawing black people with no light palms. Draw my brothers and sisters with light palms. The only people who do it right is Becky, and I love you for it. But the rest of y'all, get it together.
I'm pretty sure that in Michiko Tahachin they have. Do they?
I think, I'm not sure.
I think they do.
I have a vague memory of in Dragon Ball Z also that they have light palms, but also they have very problematic characters. Wait.
The same way in Mononoke, I'm pretty sure like that one single black character that shows up for like 2 minutes.
Dude, his lips.
He has light palms, but then his lips, and I'm like, why? Like legit, there was no reason for that character to be there.
There was no reason. He added nothing.
He added nothing. His race added nothing. I don't see why he was included. If you can't do what's right, just leave us out of it.
You know what's weird though? I see there's like some trends in like China, South Korea, Japan, where they're like, oh, black people are so cool, so cool. So it's like maybe that person just added this black character to seem cool, but it added no substance. It's like, cool, you like black excellence, but what else? Speaking of black excellence, you should definitely watch Space Pop. Noir Caesar Entertainment. Is that a segue? I'm so good. I just want to say that even though we're like calling out people for like not doing things to make their things better, I'm not gonna deny that I don't like trash manga and trash anime. I love my trash. But what I don't like is when people say, oh, I don't want you to change my anime, it's the best anime, how dare you change it. Like, stop gatekeeping. Stop it. It's not helping anyone, it's not helping the community, it's not helping the media evolve into something better. So yeah, basically I'm just saying I like trash, but also sometimes I want more than trash, and I should not be, added at just because of that.
Frankly, when it comes to taking multiple, let's say, civilizations, cultures, histories, and even some events, yes, it's true that even if you took one aspect of it and then try to use that as the central piece or the backdrop of your story, it's very easy to get it wrong. And in some of these cases, we can't expect a young mangaka, I don't know, 13-year-old, however young they can start and become popular, and then that person is going to know about that country. They don't. Most of the people who have a first popular piece, when it gets serialized, or maybe turns into an anime, a movie, or anything like that, they're not gonna have the budget first and then do the research. Although when you can see sometimes when you have seasoned mangaka, they might delve into more of the relationship between people, or like have a richer story. I think that's why sometimes people deify or idolize the work of One Piece, because so many things have been thought of before and foreshadowed. So you feel like everything that is done and shown has a purpose. And yet you have a lot of anime and manga, and frankly, it's not just in Japan. You have a lot of stories in a lot of countries where the ideas have been borrowed, but sometimes incorrectly. So you can have words, for example, that don't even mean what people are using them for, and then people just keep using it. And then the good news is sometimes it has a new meaning. Like, for example, there's a lot of manga where, actually more anime, but where they say that it's a men's romance. And I don't know where they picked that from. Probably we need some sort of historian. But like, a men's romance? What? In which case? In what country? For who? Definitely for not Japanese. Yeah, I think a men's romance changes from almost all shonen and seinen manga. It just means totally different things. Sometimes it's about the journey, the fight. Sometimes it's about just, I don't know, like going against the odds. Sometimes it's also just seeing a cute young girl. Sometimes it's just peeking through the bathhouse wall hole or whatever, peep, Anyways, so yeah, like in many cases, I think that you might have a misuse, and in the case, of course, where like they're drawing characters or scenes that they've never seen, you have that kind of problem. Like when people they had never seen a picture of a live panda, or just sorry, not a picture, like they've never seen a panda in real life, or maybe all around. So for the longest time, when you would buy like either a picture, a painting, or even just like a toy, the tail of the panda would not be anatomically correct. Why? Because they've never seen the tail of a panda. So they will look at the ears, look at the patches on the eye, and then think, okay, well, you know what? I bet you the tail is white, because it has to be different so that you can tell the tail from the rest of the back. Why would you say that? How do you know? In philosophy, I think it was my Greek survey class 10 years ago or something. I remember that they were saying that Greek philosophers in the old time, they would make these theories about how the world works, and how you have the quote unquote yin yang, and then you have the women and the men, and they had these theories about even how the woman was this it was basically a baby that didn't have enough energy, and then it didn't move enough to turn into a man. And then they would say that the teeth in the mouth, in the woman's mouth, were not the same amount as the man's mouth, because obviously they don't eat the same things or as many things. So a man needs more teeth. But then it's like, a lot of these people had wives, even if maybe they didn't really, whatever. They had wives and sisters and mothers and aunts and whatever. They could have just asked one of them, hey, can you just open your mouth? And then you check a few of them and you're like, okay, well, actually they have the same number. No, nobody checked. It was just theories. And that's why now we have, quote unquote, the scientific process. But yeah, so anyways, yes, unfortunately, there is no peer pressure. There is no community that can go and say, well, this is racist, this is inappropriate, or like you said, deaf tone, or it makes no sense. The only way to have some sort of pressure on such an industry is through a global serialization and sales, because then you can tell the pieces that actually make it on the mainstream and gross a lot of sales. They're made in a way that is either neutral or less insulting, less confusing. But then on the other end of the spectrum, when you have those kind of stories where you have board culture and stories, you also have cases where you have like the Avatar, which I forget if it was Nando V Movies or Sideways. It was another YouTuber who was talking about how, I think it was Sideways, but anyways, they were analyzing the music and how they were taking the world music and just creating this mishmash of music that would represent a sort of culture that they wanted to depict. But you can't just create a culture in your head and think, okay, well, after 100 years, this is what the music would sound like. That makes no sense. It's very, like, the parameters are so vast, and we don't have any tools to actually do that. What you can do is you can try to use like music historians and whatever, and try to understand that. But especially when you're talking about creatures that think differently and that count differently, because they have a number of fingers or whatever, yeah, then it doesn't make sense. So, yeah, so yes, some authors, some studios really, I think maybe they should not focus too much on certain details, because if they don't use it as a backdrop, then they actually should know about it. For example, I love the anime Michiko to Hachin. So I believe the Michiko is a darker, maybe black Brazilian kind of character, and they live in the slum. I mean, it's been a long time, so I don't remember all the details. But anyways, she's just this black woman, really, and she's taking care of this kid, which I believe is either mixed or she's white. And then, she just so happens to be black, and life is normal, and she just lives a normal life. They don't address her color, really, and it's not about that. But at the same time, you also have some anime, like, I can't remember the name, something about guys running. And after 2 scenes of seeing the black guy and the jokes about longer penises and the way he was running so like sluggishly and in a weird way, I'm like, if you're going to depict anyone, at least, especially if it's athletes, then you could have just picked anyone else and it would have looked good. But no. It had to be this weird character who doesn't even speak. I'm like, why did you even put them there? Anyways, I think I'm diverging. So anyways, sometimes, many times, these stories, the story building, is set up in a way that is not developed enough, and I believe they will not pass the test of time. I was just rewatching a few anime, and I can tell, like, there's so many mistakes, so many problems. Like, I was watching Senseiya, and then there's him contracting this black death, and then he's become literally black, and the way to survive it is to relieve himself of this blackness, to let it ooze out. And I'm like, okay, it's poison, got it. Still, sounds really, really, really racist. Um, and then there's the fact that there's definitely no black saints. There's actually this weird fact that so many of the saints just come from one section of the world. But then, of course, Saint Seiya has a lot of seasons and whatever, and technically, I'm sure there's other ones. They just kind of brush it off, and frankly, that's what I would rather. That they kind of make you understand that the world is bigger, that there is a richness and a vastness to the world, and then you just don't address it. Just say it's so big. It's so big. We can't even talk about it. Like the Pokemons, there's so many of them. We can focus on these ones and that region and this type, but we don't have to say all of them. And then maybe later, when it's interesting, we'll talk about the ones that fly, that teleport, that swim.
Michiko Tahachin, yeah, they have like really great character designs, and the characters are well rounded and all of that. And even the culture that they do show us, the world building, everything's good. But Shaka had noticed at some point that the language in the background on the post signs and stuff like that was a mixture of Spanish and Portuguese. We're not certain about that, but that seems like some kind of epic fail. I know that for us, if someone decided, oh, we're going to like mix two languages of two different tribes in an anime, people will be like, oh yeah, it's great that you show us this thing. You show us being in an anime, and it's awesome, this representation. But those are not the same languages. You don't get to do that. It's kind of messed up. I watched the same video, I think, the one where they're delving into the how the Avatar world building was done, how much work went into it. And okay, I don't agree with the idea that it's impossible to create a world building using people who have developed differently, evolved differently rather, and who have a different language system and even number system. Because, okay, what they had done, the people who were hired to create this world, they did a really good job. But it's when it was translated into an actual movie that it was just like a hot mess that had like a 0 point in the world building. It didn't sound like, okay, it sounded right, but it wasn't right. When it comes to the research part, I don't think, okay, I will normally say, like, if you speak English and you speak it like pretty well, either as your mother tongue or as a language you've been acquainted with for like many, many years, and you get nuances within the language, or with French or Spanish, maybe. No, some of the bigger languages, even Chinese, you're maybe not Chinese. You're more likely to be able to do the correct research and get the facts. But I know that if you are locked within your language, your native tongue, even if it's a language that's spoken in many countries like Swahili, you won't be able to find the kind of texts and videos in your language that will help you understand another culture. And I think that might be one of the problems they're having. You're out there in Japan, and yeah, you can have maybe a lot of research on people in your own region, on your continent, but it might be really difficult for you to be able to correctly portray people in Africa. But also, that's why you get beta readers. And I think they should just have that as a standard in their industry, to have people who are sensitivity readers, people who will be able to point out where you're failing and how to get better at it. Because I feel like a lot of these people, like, they're just drawing what they want, and it's a lot of, being an artist. I do what my heart tells me, and then they make like racist, sexist, transphobic, homophobic jokes, if we can even call them that, and they think that it's making art, and it's like you didn't even bother to try to do anything correctly. But I also understand that you don't have the resources. And I think this is more of we should be working together, and people should be translating things and making works available to them. Because as much as I know we get series from Vietnam, from Philippines, from Korea, I don't think they get series from us. And maybe that's one of the problems.
I totally get what you're saying. I'm also wondering about the fact that, well, sure, okay, so we could have more shows, especially in our language, that also have been translated, maybe even some commentaries, some books on them. But yeah, without it being more generalized, more publicized, and more available, it would be hard for a young kid in Japan that writes a short novel that is suddenly popular, that will get serialized and then turn into an anime and whatever, to have that kind of knowledge, to know about what to do. And so I think part of the onus, of course, is on the industry, because if the editor is going to approve a name or a serialization, then they should do that work. They should know about the fact that if this is going to be global and public, it should be changed to begin with. Now, of course, there's different publishing houses and studios. So I guess, like Shaka was saying, if an anime is kind of not a good quality, or like if it's really just for kicks and they don't want to delve too much into certain issues, I totally understand that you might have like a bad representation, and also technically a bad anime or manga. And in that case, I guess it's just up to us as the consumer to, and also as artists, or I guess also through our governments and institutions, to create a system where, like in America, where even when Dragon Ball Z came to America, they changed the voice, they changed the themes. Well, not the themes per se, but really like they changed some of the clothing. Like in the Yu-Gi-Oh playing cards, they had to add clothes to some of the cards because they were too sexy for the kids. And then in some cases, I know that there are some studios that go and remove the words like deaf. Or like when Piccolo, I think he was fighting Vegeta, he got his arm cut and he was bleeding red blood, but then they decided to make it green or something, so that it doesn't feel like it's a human being that just, well, yeah, like he's not a human being, but to make it feel like it's not a human being that got hurt, and to make it feel like it's not a viewer that got hurt, so that there's no empathy. And I really think the whole thing is about empathy. In some cases, we lack the empathy to think, how is my reader, how is the reader that I don't know in this globalized economy going to react to a document where I'm portraying women or men or homosexuals, lesbians, etc., or even, the elderly or people from another country as, whatever my view is of them. And for the editors and the studios, that's the same thing. They should think, if I want my book to be more popular, I should make it so that it can survive the test of time. But I guess that's one thing that is not gonna be done anytime soon, and I don't know what can be done about it. But definitely having a conversation about it, and in our case, it's like creating institutions that go and then approve or disapprove of certain things, so that people in the public will know, well, okay, I've heard about this anime, I've heard about this manga, is it good? Well, you look it up and then you find out that it has been reprimanded because of its views on women, or its portrayal of certain wars and certain things that happen in certain places. And it could go up to like government regulations, because at the end of the day, yes, there's the freedom of the arts, and then there's you do want people to express themselves in various ways so that we can be subjected to things that we've never heard of. But at the same time, we also need the public to be able to be educated really about what they're consuming, so that they know that, okay, I had fun, but this is something that I should not show to my kids, or I shouldn't share it with my friends because of these reasons. And I will not rewatch it, and then I will not continue consuming this product, because I want to permeate the idea into the world that it was a nice experiment, but it failed. So, yeah. I think that was a great talk. We should try some more.